This is Thursday media availability with Traverse Family head football coach Justin Wilcox after practice number 19 of fall camp. And we'll go ahead and get questions started with Jeff Ferrato from Cal Sports Report.
Hey, Justin, can you give us an update, please, on your quarterback situation? You knew this question was coming.
Yeah. Really like the quarterbacks and what they've done this camp. Really, those three guys have gotten significant reps, probably upwards of 450, 500 each when you look at team and 7-on-7. And I tell you what, all of them, starting with Fernando, have made huge strides, and we got to keep them doing that. We don't have anything to announce right now, but Fernando, Chandler, CJ, all those guys have had really, really strong camps. And I think the thing I'm most excited about is just their decision making on where to go with the ball. The ball's going to the right spots, and I think there's always some things to work on, and each of them have specific things, but really pleased with the group overall.
You expect to name a starter before the Davis game, or is it possible you could play 2 or even 3 guys in that game?
Yeah, we'll have a plan once we're going into the game, but how much we share is you're probably going to be wanting more information, Jeff. I'll put it that way.
Thank you.
All right, if you got the next question, go ahead and put it in the chat and we'll go ahead and call on you. And we'll go to Thomas Dunn from Right for California.
Good afternoon, Justin. Over the course of your time at Cal, you've seen a boatload of units at special teams. Why is this the one that's going to make noise and help your team in complementary football?
Excuse me, Thomas, you said special teams?
Yes.
Yeah. We all felt coming out of last season, one area we could make a huge jump is in special teams. And we feel like we have the opportunity to do that. When you look at the specialists positions, the kicker, punter, snapper, holder, we feel really strongly about the talent there. Now, as we've talked about before, those specialists, they only get one play at a time, and it's kind of, as Ryan Longwell would put it, it's A or F, but tell you what they've done in camp has been really impressive. So we're excited about that group. And then the number of people we can cover a kick or a punt with, and on the flip side, the people that can hold up and get a return going. And I think the other area where we feel like we've made a big jump, and ultimately we'll find out on game day, is the actual returners. Most coaches that I've ever been around, and I think it's true, would say to be a great return team, kickoff returns and punt returns, it starts with the returner. That's like number 1, 2 on the list. And then you have to have ability to hold people up and get the returns going, but you have to have a dynamic returner. And we feel like we got some guys back there that can make the first guy miss and get us some yards, because over the course of a game, the field position thing, it's a huge, huge deal. And when you look at average starting field position and what that means to successful drives, and also, when you can back people up, make them go long fields, how hard it is for teams to score, ultimately that's the difference in winning and losing sometimes. So the obvious things are obviously kick and field goals, PATs and field goals. Kicking the ball in or out of the end zone is huge. Obviously the punter and his skill, the returners and their skill, but this average starting field position is something we talk about a lot. We feel like we have an opportunity to be much better than we were.
Thank you.
All right, we'll go to Steve Kroner from the SF Chronicle.
How you doing?
Good, Steve. How are you?
Doing okay. If you were going to focus on 1 or 2 things about which you're most confident in this team heading into August 31st against UC Davis, and 1 or 2 things that are still keeping you up at night, what would those each 1 or 2 things be?
Oh, well, I'm very confident that the guys will go out and compete hard. It's been a very, very competitive camp. And as we talked about last night in our team meeting, the candidates at each position I mean, we've had more candidates for playing time on this team than we've had in previous years. And that's a good thing. I think that's, you know, a product of obviously the coaches preparing them, but the transfer portal, the NIL marketplace, all that factors in. But there's more candidates for playing time, so those spots are really competitive. So I feel real good about that, and that guys are going to be looking to make the most of their reps and their opportunities. I think there's certain groups where we're going to play multiple people in certain positions where you're just going to see, you know, more and more people rolling through there. And then, you know, I'm really anxious. I don't know if it's keeping me up, but I'm excited to see, you know, in some of these position groups, like, you know, when it goes live and we're playing for real and it's you know, Saturday afternoon, who are going to be the guys that step up and make those plays that count. And, you know, making a play in a game, you know, whether it's a 12-yard completion, maybe it's a block, a white block we call it, or maybe it's a, you know, playing great technique at corner, whatever it is. But throughout the game, the guys that can do that over and over again and execute their job at a high level, and regardless of, you know, the situation in the game, how many plays we've been on the field, the opponent doesn't, you know, none of that really matters. We just got to go out and do our job. I want to see who can do that and show up on those game days and really perform at a high level. And there's, like I said, there's a ton of candidates and they're going to get opportunities. I'm excited to see who that's going to be.
All right, we'll go to Jim McGill from Bear Insider.
Hey, Justin, can you talk a little bit about the offensive line situation right now? Looks like you're mixing and matching significantly, trying to get the 5 best guys out there. Early on, before the mixing and matching, it seemed to be there some stability and the defense didn't get as much penetration. But when do you start to think about the chemistry element and getting those same 5 guys to get used to working together regularly?
Well, we we think about that a lot, and it's balancing. You want to have your best players on the field if something were to happen, because in a perfect world, you know, 5 guys would line up to start fall camp, and if those are your best 5, they play together throughout the entire season. Unfortunately, as we all know, football is a physical game and injuries occur, and so you want to make sure that when you have to sub somebody in, you're subbing in your next best player and not always just your second team person at that position. And so we do consider, you know, the chemistry aspect, and, you know, can a guy learn multiple positions, and if he's a young player, is that too much for him or not? And so we never want to, you know, for lack of a better phrase, rob Peter to pay Paul, but we also want to make sure we got our 5 best players on the field. So we do consider it. And Coach Blesh does a good job of teaching those guys, and we'll have a really good rhythm throughout the week of getting the guys work together. But as I mentioned before, I mean, things happen in football, whether it's a, you know, guy goes down for a play or two, or needs a one series or a rack of plays to catch his breath, whatever it might be. You have to be able to play more than 5 guys, and finding those right 5 is, you know, art more than it is a science.
All right, next question will be Cody Henderson from the League Winners.
I believe you're muted.
Hey, Coach. Your game against Auburn will be the first time that you've played on the road against an SEC team since 2019. Besides practicing in the heat, how else are you preparing your players for that type of environment?
Well, we know, you know, it'll be a great environment down there. We know it'll be hot. Obviously, the fans and the pageantry will be second to none. But really what we're most interested in is finishing out our fall camp and having a great first week of practice, because what's most important for us is that we play good football, you know, and acknowledge the environments we're playing in at home or on the road, and any adjustments we need to make. But we gotta do a great job of focusing on playing great football. And you know, when the time comes, we'll adjust as needed. But we know it'll be a heck of a challenge. But our attention right now is on finishing out fall camp the best we possibly can, and then having a great week to prepare for UC Davis.
Thanks, Coach.
All right, Joaquin Ruiz from the Daily Cow.
Hey, Coach. Nice to meet you.
just wanted to ask real briefly, Teddy Buchanan on your side now, obviously played against him 2 years ago, had a big game, 8 tackles and an INT. What's it like to have him on your side now and then also making his debut against his former school?
Yeah. Well, we're really glad to have him as opposed to be playing against him. I'll tell you that much. He is a very impressive young guy. Physically, he's a very talented guy, as you may have seen from the video if you watched him. We knew that when we played against him. But I think what's as or more impressive is just his approach to football. I mean, he is an absolute professional when it comes to preparation, meetings, walkthroughs, how he takes care of his bodies, the lifts, all that, rehab and regen. He is just a very, very driven, motivated, accountable guy. And he's been, for him to really just get here this summer and to be where he is mentally with the defense and all that, you can just tell he's made of the right stuff. I mean, he really is. So I'm excited for him. And in terms of him playing against his former team, I would say, 5 years ago or a decade ago, it would be really unique for guys to do that. And in this era, it's just commonplace. I think we're just in a new era of college football, and there's going to be more and more of those situations where guys are playing against their former team. And but I don't want to speak for Teddy on that. I know he's done a great job for us. We're really glad to have him, and I know he's looking forward to playing.
Thank you.
All right, back to Steve Kroner.
Yeah, Justin, kind of following up on Joaquin's question. There's an old saying that it's better to beat your friends than to beat your enemies because you see your friends more often. I assume that you and Tim Plow are still pretty close friends. How much have you guys talked in the run up to this game, and how much will you talk next week?
Yeah, so I am, I think so highly of Tim. I mean, Tim is a big time football coach. I mean, really, really impressive coach. Even better human being. I mean, loved having him when he was here. Tried to do anything we could to keep him here, but I'm very happy for him and his family. He's just a great person who happens to be an excellent football coach, one of the smartest guys you'll meet. But leading up to this game, we haven't talked. I'm sure after the game we will, and be talking on more a regular basis because he's a guy that I certainly would love to keep up with. But in our profession, I mean, this happens from time to time. I've coached against people that I consider great friends, but in the lead up to the game, everybody kind of gives each other their space because what's most important is the team we're on and our preparation for those games, and then we'll be great friends post game. But yeah, I think the world of him, and I will root for him on most every day except for the one. That's just kind of how I feel about it, and yeah.
All right, back to Jeff Ferrato.
Justin, can you tell us whether or not a few guys who've been nicked up will be ready for the Davis game? Vadakani, Matthews, Merriweather, for instance.
Yeah, so all three of those guys we're hopeful to be back. These injuries and as they go, and you probably get tired of hearing me say this, but that's really between the players and the medical staff and return to play staff, strength and conditioning. So I don't decide on when the players come back. I'm hopeful that they come back as soon as humanly possible. I know that those guys are working really hard to get back. But the conversation essentially goes, so-and-so will be back at practice today or they won't. And then we practice with the guys that are there. That's kind of how this goes. And we have a lot of these injuries, your time frames, there's kind of a wide range because there's a ton of factors, whether it's, the healing process or the rehab process, the, physical, the pain tolerance, all these things factor in. But yeah, we're not in charge of that as coaches. We're told who's available and we go with those guys.
If I can follow up on a different one, you've obviously for good reason held Jaden out of most of live stuff. So you've played a lot of other running backs. Do you have a pecking order there figured out? Who are you particularly pleased with, who's going to get some playing time?
You know, that's a good question. I think a bunch of those guys can help us in certain situations. The guy the last week that's really made a jump is Kadarius. I thought this last, 5 to 7 days, he's really been noticeable. The jet gives you a little bit different element. He showed up as well and made some really nice plays. Cardwell coming off an injury has been coming along. You've seen the growth in him throughout the past month. So, and then Jamal, the young running back, bigger guy, runs behind his pads, a different style than most of those other guys. And he really just needs to get into football shape at this level. But he's shown some things as well. So I think that room's done a good job. And I think you can see a number of different guys back there.
Thank you.
All right, we'll go to Matt Moreno from Rivals.
Coach, there's a couple guys that have kind of persevered through some added competition. Miles Williams on defense, Maven Anderson at receiver, who've kind of withstood some added competition. What can you say about, those guys and a few others that have maybe done the same?
Yeah, I think those are two great examples. Miles Williams, man, he's been here a while now, and he has, from the time he got here till now, like the growth on and off the field. I mean, it's just been really, really enjoyable and cool to see where he was and where he is now. And Miles is an extremely smart guy. I mean, he knows our defense as well as anybody. I kind of, talk to him all the time about, like, he knows it like the coaches almost, and I think he takes pride in that. I know he does. He's a great communicator. He's put himself in really good positions, and now it's about going out and having all that together and then finishing the plays, the tackles, the PBUs. And I just think he's done a heck of a job. I mean, guy practices every day. He's vocal out there. So I'm really, really proud of Miles, and done a good job. And there's some other guys that are pushing for playing time there. I mean, with Crosby and Yates and that secondary, Cam Sidney, they've done a heck of a job too. So we'll play more than two safeties, but Miles has done a really good job this camp. Maven Anderson, same thing. I think Maven, especially the past week and a half, he has had a really, really good past 10 practices or so. Same deal, brought in competition, and he's been out there and competing. And, one of the things that is so critical in all this is just your availability. If guys get dinged up, that you take advantage of the reps, and there's guys that are doing that. And those two guys are examples of that they've made sure to be out there and available so they can get the reps. And that's what you want, enough competition where, man, you don't want to let anybody take an extra rep. You want to make sure you get yours. And if you can, you're going to steal somebody else's. So I think both those guys are a testament, are a good example of that. And it's a testament to their mentality this camp. And we need to keep that going from them and others.
All right, we'll wrap this up with two more questions. Jeff, you can go, and then Cody, you can follow Jeff.
Yeah, Justin, Nick Morrow was a guy who kind of, at least for some of us, emerged as a surprise last year, winning a starting spot at tackle. He had played tight end, I guess, and defensive line in high school. And he's so young, but he's huge. Can you just talk about his development, where he stands now? Are you comfortable with him and his absolute lack of college experience going into a season as a starter?
Yep, he has come another guy that's come really a long way since we signed him. He was you said it, he's from Flagstaff, tight end, DN, and the story, we brought him to a camp, and he worked out at tight end and DN, and we said, well, we don't think he's either of those, but he's going to be something. And he's the old school, gray shirt, where he sat out the first fall and came in, put on some weight, came in, and was here all last year. And he's done a heck of a job. Coach Blesh is really, to be where he was. I remember the first spring practices, we almost couldn't have him in with some of the DNs because he was just unfamiliar with the position, was brand new, was still growing physically. And now, he's our starting left tackle. And he, just to be fair to him, he's still a a work in progress, but in a really good way. I mean, because he has things that you can't teach. I mean, he's 6'6" and 300 pounds, and he's athletic. His ceiling is extremely high. Is he close to hitting that yet? Nope, not quite. And he's going to be learning a lot along the way. But if he sticks with it and, keeps buying into the training and the weightlifting and the eating and just the lifestyle that it takes to be a great left tackle, he's got a very, very bright future. So he's going to play a lot, and, he's probably not going to be perfect, but each time he goes out there, he's going to learn something really valuable. And if he can use that, put that in the bank, he's got a bright future.
And given that ceiling that you see for him, and how young he is, are you going to give him some slack and be patient with his development, even on those days where it's not perfect?
Well, yeah, we're going to play. It's likely we'll play more than one tackle. And yeah, I think, our job is to coach him and help him. And when he makes a mistake, that we correct him, and, he makes a new mistake and not the same one over and over again. And he's got the mentality for it. Again, he's still a young guy who's come a long way in a short period of time. And the more he plays, the better he's going to get. And so, that's just kind of how this game goes, right? I mean, you get out there and you get your opportunities. You want to make the most of them, and sometimes you get, with the way the roster shapes up, maybe you'll get an opportunity earlier in your career, or maybe it doesn't come till a little bit later. But ultimately, you want to be ready to take advantage of the reps you get, and I know he'll do that. But we're not expecting perfection, from him or anybody else. We're aiming for it, and then we're gonna, settle for great. But I'm really pleased he's here and looking forward to watching him.
Thank you.
Yeah, Coach, just to wrap this up here, what are some personal goals that you have for yourself this season?
Some personal goals. Well, my goals really align with the team, and my job is to make sure our team is prepared the best it can be each and every week, and physically, mentally, situationally, that we're prepared to play great football. And coaches, like players, like we're all always a work in progress. And I don't pretend like everything we've done has been perfect, and we're always assessing what we've done, what can we do to get better, what are the best practices, how do we find situations that can help our players be in the moment and play with full of confidence. And I just think that my job is to prepare those guys, give them an environment where they're prepared to play their best football, and then each and every week we're learning a little bit something about ourselves and adjusting and adapting to play better the next week.